Good morning. My name is Rachel Yang Zhou, and I'm a research fellow with the Higher Education Center at the Public Policy Institute of California. Welcome to our virtual program today, featuring the findings from PPIC's report, Making Gains in Math Through Dual Enrollment. The report, technical appendix, policy brief, and slides from today's briefing can be found on our website at ppic.org. This research and today's event are supported with funding from the California Community Foundation and the Gates Foundation. We would like to thank them for their support. For today's program, I will first present some of the key findings from the report. Then I'll be joined by my colleagues and report co-authors, Olga Rodriguez and Hoyun Kim. Together, we will discuss key takeaways and answer questions from our virtual audience. If you have a question, please send it along with your name and organization to the email address on the screen, ppiceventquestions@gmail.com. As a reminder, PPIC is a public charity and does not take or support positions on any ballot measure or on any local, state, or federal legislation, nor does it support, endorse, or oppose any political parties or candidates for public office. And now, on to the presentation. First of all, I would like to thank my co-authors, Olga Rodriguez, Daniel Payales Montoya, Hoyun Kim, and Eric Essen. Dual enrollment allows high school students to complete college courses for credit, providing an early path for higher education. Over the past decade, major legislation, multi-million-dollar investments, and efforts across policy and advocacy groups have supported the growth of dual enrollment in California. Research consistently shows that dual enrollment improves outcomes in both high school and college for students. Our study specifically focused on dual enrollment math, as math has long been a major barrier to success in both high school and college. Dual enrollment can help address learning loss by giving students access to college-level courses as soon as they complete high school prerequisites. This is especially crucial with math, given that about a quarter of high school seniors do not take math. Dual enrollment can also help students complete gateway math courses early, which research suggests can significantly boost their college success. Furthermore, high school students who are full-time learners do not face many of the non-academic challenges that adult students do, making them better positioned to benefit from the support available at both the high school and college levels. Our study examined dual enrollment math participation, course outcomes, and subsequent college outcomes of math dual enrollees. We used data from the California Community College Chancellor's Office. Also, we explored opportunities and the challenges with current efforts to expand math dual enrollment through interviews with school leaders. First, we've seen a significant growth in dual enrollment math participation. In this figure, the orange bars show the total number of dual enrollment students, and the blue bars show the number of those who took math courses. The data are broken down by high school graduating cohort. In the 2022 to 23 cohort, which is the second set of bars from the right, and is the most recent cohort with full data, about 20,000 students enrolled in a math course through dual enrollment. This is up from just over 10,700 in the 2015 to 16 cohort, which can be seen by the leftmost set of bars. Despite this growth, math still takes up a relatively small share, representing about 15 to 17% of all dual enrollees. As more students participate in math dual enrollment, we've also seen a notable shift toward transfer-level math courses. Transfer-level courses are college-level courses that meet the requirements to transfer to UC and CSU. This figure compares the share of students who took transfer-level math courses, shown in orange, versus non-transferable math only, shown in blue. Over the span of 9 graduating cohorts, the share of students in transfer-level math has increased from below 70% to over 90%. Also, there was a 4 percentage point increase between the cohorts of 2018 to 19 and 2019 to 20. This was slightly larger than in the previous cohorts and was around the AB 705 deadline, which aims to improve equitable access to transfer-level math and English. Our findings also show that CCAP dual enrollment in math has become more popular. CCAP, or College and Career Access Pathways, was established with AB 288 with the goal to expand dual enrollment opportunities, especially among underserved populations. In the 2022 to 23 cohort, around a third of math dual enrollees participated through CCAP. This program has also helped improve equity among underserved student groups. This figure shows the percentage of different students in each program and pathway for the 2022 to 23 cohort. The 4 sets of bars from left to right represent students in CCAP SLAM, non-CCAP SLAM, CCAP B-STEM, and non-CCAP B-STEM. What's important to note here is that in both the SLAM and B-STEM pathways, historically underrepresented students, including first-generation Latino and Black students, are more equitably represented in CCAP programs. In addition to these patterns, we also looked at college-going rates among math dual enrollees. In this figure, the top row shows the college-going rates for all high school graduates in the state from the CDE data, while the second row shows the rates for math dual enrollees. Overall, math dual enrollees have a higher college-going rate, especially to the UC system. The bottom 2 rows compare CCAP versus non-CCAP math students. Overall, CCAP math students have a higher college-going rate, especially to community colleges and CSUs. Next, we focused on students who enrolled in a community college after high school as the degree or transfer intending student. Our findings show that math dual enrollees demonstrate stronger early momentum and better early college performance by the end of their first college year. Furthermore, this figure shows the associate's degree completion rates and transfer rates among community college students. Math dual enrollees, both those in CCAP and in non-CCAP, tend to have better college completion outcomes than students who did not participate in dual enrollment during high school. CCAP math students have higher associate's degree completion rates, but lower transfer rates compared to those of non-CCAP math students. In particular, the striped bars represent students who completed transfer-level math in high school through dual enrollment, and they show the strongest completion outcomes. In addition to the quantitative analysis, we conducted 26 interviews with K-12 college and regional leaders. Our interviews revealed that CCAP has changed how dual enrollment is delivered. Under CCAP agreements, many courses can be scheduled to align with high school timelines, and instruction locations can be moved from college campuses to high school campuses. This also encourages more high school math teachers to teach dual enrollment and facilitates greater success with online courses. As a result, high school students benefit from improved accessibility and stronger support compared to traditional college courses. In addition, AB 705, the remedial education reform, have shaped math course offerings at many community colleges. And dual enrollment math courses have shifted as well. We've seen a decline in remedial math courses and an increase in transfer-level stats courses for dual enrollment. While dual enrollment math has become more available to a wider range of students, the narrowing of course availability may now target a more specific demographic. This opens up several opportunities. As we discussed, AB 705 has changed how community colleges offer dual enrollment math, making transfer-level math courses more accessible for high school students. CCAP has also helped by shaping clearer pathways for dual enrollment math and expanding dual enrollment math, especially in underserved regions with more support. That said, our interviews also identified some challenges with implementing dual enrollment math. The biggest challenge is navigating the different priorities and concerns of two separate education systems, high schools and community colleges. This makes collaboration and alignment complex and resource intensive. On top of that, each side has its own approach to recruiting students for dual enrollment math, which affects who gets access to these opportunities. Based on our findings, we recommend that K-12 and college partners use data to recruit students and improve the representation among CCAP's focused populations, especially students who are not already college-bound and are underrepresented in higher education. High school and college counselors and instructors could do more to connect students with tutoring and support services, and professional development, as well as collaborations on course design and implementation should be part of a larger strategy to support success. Also, as the demand for dual enrollment math grows, we need innovative ways to increase the supply, such as through online offerings. Strengthening collaborations between high schools and colleges is key, and linked data systems are essential to fully unlock the benefits of dual enrollment. With that, I conclude the presentation of today. Just a reminder, please submit your questions to ppiceventquestions@gmail.com. Now I will invite my colleagues, Olga Rodriguez and Hoyun Kim. Welcome, Olga and Hoyun.
Hello, good afternoon. I guess I'll get started with just a little bit of opening remarks on kind of why math. So I'll just reiterate a few points that Rachel made in her presentation. So our report focuses on math because math has been long considered a barrier. Research has shown, the data shows that math is a tremendous barrier for both high school and math success and college success. And over the last few years, especially, there's been a considerable momentum from both the policy, the research, or the practice and advocacy community, really to think about how do we make progress on two key fronts. And one of those has been really to think about legislation. How can we use legislation to broaden access to dual enrollment? And we build on kind of those efforts on AB 288 in particular, which established CCAP. We've also seen tremendous work on how to improve equitable access to math, especially college level math. And this has been especially centered at community colleges through legislation like Assembly Bill 288. So we saw an opportunity to really think about how to connect both pieces of legislation to really find ways to improve access and outcomes for this key gateway course. I'll also share that this is quite personal to me. Many years ago, I was that dual enrollment math student, but I came across this dual enrollment math student by chance because my brother was was enrolled at the community college. But once there, I actually learned that my AP calculus teacher from my high school was actually sending his high schooler to the community college to take the dual enrollment course. And so looking back, there's no question what option was better for me. I took 2 semesters of dual enrollment math and transferred 12 credits of college level math when I started at UC Santa Barbara. And if I would have done the AP option at my high school, I would have had to have passed the test in order to get credits, and I would have only gotten like 4 credits. So there's no question which option was better for me and in terms of my time, in terms of the state's investment in me. So as you can imagine, looking back at my own experience, I think and giving the strong opportunities, a big question on my mind was, what do the data have to say about dual enrollment math in California? And what are the challenges and opportunities to really supporting equitable access and success of dual enrollment math for California students? And so now we'll dive into our discussion, and we'll start with a few key findings. My first question is for you, Rachel. So the research showed a steady growth of dual enrollment math participation with more high school students enrolling in the transfer level courses. Can you tell us a little bit about the role CCAP played in this trend?
Sure. Our findings show that dual enrollment math participation has been growing over the past decade. And in the meantime, CCAP have also become more popular. The share of math dual enrollees who participated through CCAP programs has increased from less than 10% a few cohorts ago to around a third of students today. And what I find is in particular encouraging is that CCAP programs are serving a much more diverse student population. Our historically underserved students, Black, Latino, and first-generation students are more equitably represented among CCAP programs. And also, these students are not only just enrolling in math courses and transfer-level math courses, they're also succeeding in these courses. In fact, our findings show that among students who come from an underserved population group, students in CCAP programs have higher course success rates than students in other dual enrollment programs. However, that said, although Latino and Black students, their representation is higher among CCAP programs, we still see that their participation falls short of their overall participation among high school 12th graders. That shows more work needs to be done to fully close the equity gaps.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. I think that your response and kind of this question really transitions well into my next question, because the question remains, how do we address kind of these remaining gaps? How do we ensure that as access to dual enrollment math becomes more equitable, more diverse groups of students access this course? We want to learn how do we address this, and our qualitative work that we did as part of this study really helps us shed light onto these questions. So my next question is for you, Hoyun. Can you tell us a little bit about what additional strategies could help close the remaining gaps in dual enrollment math participation, and what supports are necessary to ensure that we see equitable completion in the course?
Definitely. So I would say that there's two different kinds of levels in terms of how we've seen school sites address these issues. So the first one is the fact that courses in high school, you have to register for those courses. And in one given time period, there might be multiple options. So say you're taking Spanish 3, but that happens to be the time slot that dual enrollment math or say statistics is offered. That means that if you're a student that wants to take Spanish 3, then you can't take that dual enrollment course. So from the teachers and counselors and parents side, regarding the school, when they're scheduling these dual enrollment course offerings, they would have to identify which students they want to make sure that these dual enrollment courses are accessible to, and which students they want to particularly target in order to make sure that these outcomes may be equitable in terms of even who has the option to enroll for these courses. But then another level is the support. So supports would also have to be equitably offered, such as at a time that not only students who have resources already might be able to access them. So one of the examples would be that you would want these supports to be available at the school where the students already are during a time when the students are already there, because anything outside of the school hours would then end up excluding the students who might have other responsibilities or commitments outside.
Well, thank you so much. And so going into one of our recommendations, so given kind of the promising findings in terms of access and success for dual enrollment math, one of the recommendations we have is to find innovative ways to increase the supply of these courses to high schoolers. And especially as they, you know, immediately after they complete their high school level prerequisite, which is often Algebra 2. And as Rachel noted in her presentation, I think the timing of it, like it helps eliminate the learning loss that can occur, because we know that the high school graduation requirements are not necessarily aligned with the college prep requirements. And so if you only require 2 high school courses for graduation, there could potentially be a 2-year gap before a student enrolls in college. So given this, from the research and from what we heard from sites, it seemed like online courses seem to be promising to increase access. In our previous research, I think kind of also finds this, you know, the promise of online. But we know that the research on online education is not suggest that there's some work to do to ensure that students are successful and that results are equitable. Can you tell us a little bit about what you learned from talking to the colleges and the high schools? How did some of these sites address these concerns? And also we know that there are other issues with kind of increasing access to dual enrollment related to like the availability of sufficient instructors who are, you know, have the minimum qualifications. So this is another challenge. Can you tell us a little bit more about how these 2 challenges can be addressed or have been addressed by the sites that you talked to?
Right. So I'll start with the modality, the online courses you mentioned. So it's true that a lot of high schools and districts have started offering dual enrollment through online coursework. And as you mentioned, there is a bit of a limitation to whether online coursework is ideal or not. But one of the upsides of online coursework is that it does offer that flexibility so that students who might need more flexibility still have access to dual enrollment courses. So one way that the high schools we've seen have tried to address this concern of online courses aren't like perfect is that they try to make it hybrid in some sense. So even though the course itself is online and the content is online, they'll have a high school teacher present during structured times at the school to facilitate the learning and be there to support the students when they're navigating the online course themselves. So there is a bit of a trade-off in terms of modality, but that was probably the main way that we've seen a lot of high schools try to mitigate that limitation. And then regarding the finding the instructors, I heard you mention that. So one thing is that even in our report, we mentioned that it's important that because dual enrollment is something that involves both the high schools and the community colleges, it's important to ensure collaboration rather than competition. So rather than seeing instructors as somebody that comes from the high school versus the college, fostering those collaborative relationships is really important between the high school instructors who are more familiar with the high school students, as well as the college faculty that are more familiar with the curriculum and the courses that they've developed as they share it with the high schools. And so one thing that we've seen at some locations, though not all, is that in order to do that, there's a lot of calibration that needs to happen, because currently in the state of California, the math curriculum has a Math 1, Math 2, Math 3 sequence, which doesn't perfectly align or translate to college level math courses such as calculus and statistics. And so finding the middle ground and figuring out how A can translate to B is something that instructors from both sides would have to come together to communicate.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Hoyun. So next we'll jump into one of the other set of findings from our study. We also looked at community college outcomes for dual enrollment students who subsequently matriculate at a community college as a degree-seeking student. So here we see that CCAP students are going to college at higher rates. We also see that they're completing associate degree at higher rates, but they're transferring at lower rates than their peers who took dual enrollment math through non-CCAP. Rachel, can you tell us a little bit more about this finding? Maybe what might be motivating some of these trends, or any insights you might have on this finding as well?
Sure. Many factors could explain the differences we see in the college outcomes, especially the degree and transfer outcomes, the contrast between CCAP and non-CCAP math students. For example, the educational goals that could be different between CCAP math students and non-CCAP students. From the data, we've seen that CCAP math students are more likely to declare a goal as completing an associate's degree than transferring to a four-year, while non-CCAP math students are more likely to declare a goal of directly transferring to a four-year without an associate's degree. So the differences we see in the degree and transfer outcomes may partly reflect the underlying differences between students who participated in CCAP versus non-CCAP programs. That said, other factors could also play a role. For example, gaps in support for CCAP students who have the goal of transferring to a four-year. So further strengthening transfer pathways could help address some of the barriers and improve transfer outcomes for CCAP students.
Wonderful. So I have one other question for our panel here. So based on the research that you all conducted, if you could prioritize one policy change or investment to improve dual enrollment math access and outcomes, what would that be? And we'll start with you, Rachel.
I think our findings provide suggestive evidence that CCAP programs helped improve access to dual enrollment and also promote equity in the access by strengthening or by addressing that some structural barriers. For example, we talk about the shift of time to better align with high school schedules, the shift of instruction location, and prioritizing underserved students with more support. I think our findings suggest that investments to further overcome these barriers and promoting the structural changes, and also make sure that the funding could maintain the structural changes to be consistent, appear promising to further improve access and success.
Great. I'll hand it over to you, Hoyun. Do you have your suggestion, recommendation based on the research?
Yeah, just to add on to what Rachel said, I think consistency is probably one of the key elements that came up a lot during our interviews as we were looking into what was going on. I think that it's great that a lot of these grants allowed different regions to try out new things and to find out what works best for their area. But because these are grants, there's a time limit to when the funding and the resources are going to be provided. And so because of that, there might be a need to think about the future as well. Like, how does continuity get communicated to even the high school students or the incoming middle school students if there isn't a lot of clarity or certainty about what the options for them are going to look like a couple of years ahead? So being able to even speak to that, I think from the policy side would be a tremendous amount of help for those who are on the ground trying to support the students.
Wonderful. And I'll pause here just to remind our audience that you can send over your questions to ppiceventquestions@gmail.com. And we will transition now. We do have a couple of audience questions. And I invite others to please send yours in, and we'll try to get to those as well. So the first question comes from Brenda, who's a dual enrollment instructor at a community college in the San Diego area. And so she is wondering, a lot of good information comes from this report, but she's curious to know what surprised you most about the research and your findings. And so we'll start with you, Rachel.
Sure. I wouldn't say this is like a surprising finding, but it's definitely encouraging to see it backed up by the data. So I think it's worth highlighting. That is, the vast majority of math student enrollees are taking transfer level math courses. And also, they are not just enrolling in these courses, the course success rates are high and high across the board, even among the historically underserved student populations on the first generation Black and Latino students. So I think this really reinforces the idea that dual enrollment can give students a strong head start into college and help them build early momentum toward their goals. It's just great to see that students are accessing these courses and succeeding in them through dual enrollment.
Wonderful. How about you, Hoyun? What surprised you?
I wouldn't say this was too surprising either, but I think it's a pleasant surprise, or an encouraging story to hear. One of the regions that we were interviewing, I learned that they actually had a very successful case of offering dual enrollment math, even before there were other policies such as AB 288, which introduced CCAP. And so I think that was a great reflection of the local care and effort that the teachers and the community just were able to mobilize because they were very aware of the unique needs of the students and what would help them. And then what I think happened after in that particular region's case was that with the introduction of CCAP, they did transition onto CCAP and that gave them more structure. So what they were doing that was already successful could now be supported in a way that was more stable so that the original teacher who had started this dual enrollment initiative because they were very passionate about it, they're retiring now, but now it can be passed off and there's some language from the school side as well as a way to professional development of sorts to pass it on to the next generation of teachers and students.
Great. I'll add my thoughts as well. So I think it connects to what has already been shared, but it's related to kind of just the share of students taking the transfer level math course and kind of the shift we've seen over time. And I'll share from our very first dual enrollment report a few years ago when we heard stories about how as community colleges were moving away from offering dev ed below transfer level courses, we heard from some colleges that were actually thinking of using CCAP as a way to continue to offer these courses because technically high school students, this is not remediation. So they could do more of these courses, you know, if they were for the high school population. However, in that first report, we recommended that was not necessarily aligned with kind of the intent of AB 705 and the thoughts of ADA to really expand access to the college courses. And so our recommendation was to prioritize transfer level courses. And I think the connection with AB 288 and AB 705, kind of the fact that we have seen a dramatic growth and important growth towards transfer level prioritizing those courses, I think was a pleasant surprise that I was concerned that we were hearing that CCAP could be used to offer remedial courses to high school students. And it was good to see that actually it was going in the other direction. So that was a really great finding for us. So we have a second question from a high school principal in an Imperial Unified. So your findings suggest that dual enrollment leads to better outcomes. And can you tell us, so does this mean that dual enrollment math should be offered to all high school students? What do you research say about this? So Hoyun, do you want to start?
Yes, just to reiterate, I think the question was, should dual enrollment be offered to all students for math? And
Yes.
I think the simple answer that does need to be qualified is yes, but, and I think this was evidenced by some of the interviews that we received or the interviews that we conducted, that although it is important to offer dual enrollment to everybody because it does on average benefit the students, it's not the same quote unquote kind of dual enrollment to everybody and becoming another method of one size fits all for all the students. So I think dual enrollment might look very different for each school. And according to where you know your students are at and what scaffolding might need to take place instructionally, the dual enrollment curriculum might look a little bit different. So college courses typically last for one semester of the high school year. And so for one site, it may look like, okay, then for the other half of the semester, what are we going to be doing after the dual enrollment course? Or for another site, it may look like, oh, for the semester before we start the dual enrollment course, how do we prepare the students so that they're ready? And so to go back to the original question, dual enrollment math could benefit all students and therefore would be great if it were accessible to everybody, but to then take that and apply it unilaterally the same way to everybody would not be the right way to go. It really would take investment into figuring out where are each students at. So one case we found this happening was with the case of Math Bridge, which was a program that we also looked into for our report. And we saw that they were working very closely with the local high schools in the sense that they were actually looking at the student transcripts and seeing what kinds of students would be enrolling in these courses even before the course was offered, and trying to figure out how would preparation look like between the community college faculty as well as the paired up local high school teachers in terms of getting them ready for the course that they would be taking in the next semester.
Great. Thank you so much. We have a third question. Let's see. So the audience member wants to know what courses students take. I think relatedly, like, you know, if there's a district out there, a high school out there who is interested and knows is seeing the research that there's tremendous amount of promise to expanding this opportunity to their students, and they're thinking about where to start, what course they might consider offering first. So can you tell us a little bit more about like what courses are students taking, how are they performing, and especially like if there's insights into students who have been underserved. And so Rachel, do you want to start with this one?
Yeah, I can share the course distribution patterns statewide from the data. We look at the most recent cohort, 2022 to 23 cohort, and among all the math course enrollments, only about 10% of the enrollments are non-transferable math. So the vast majority are at the transfer level. And about a third are in the SLAM pathway, liberal arts, math, and stats courses. Also, more than half are in the B-STEM courses, so courses such as college algebra, trigonometry, pre-calculus, calculus, and upper division math courses. I think it's worth noting that 17% of the enrollments are in upper division math courses, such as higher level calculus and linear algebra. And while most due enrollments took only one math course, there are some students taking multiple courses. And the most popular combination for those who taking multiple courses was Calculus 1 plus one higher level math course. I think this really shows that dual enrollment is helping students to progress in the college level math sequence. And for the traditionally underserved students, the first generation Latino and Black students, our data show that they are more represented in the SLAM pathway than B-STEM pathway. And from a pre-AB 705 cohort, from the time before the remedial education reform to more recent cohorts, they are more represented in transfer level courses. As to their performance, the course success rates are high and high across demographics. However, we did see that first generation students still have lower course success rates than their non-first generation peers, and the rates are lower among Black and Latino students comparing to their Asian and white peers. So this shows that there's more work that needs to be done to fully close those gaps. However, from our findings, one promising strategy is that we saw for students from the underserved populations, their course success rates are higher if they enrolled in the CCAP programs comparing to students in other dual enrollment programs. And I think this suggests that CCAP programs is a promising tool to help students to improve the access and success in dual enrollment math.
Would you like to add to the question about what math to offer? How are students doing?
Yeah, and to address what kinds of math, I would say that the most common, quote unquote, popular kind of math course that we've seen being offered newly through dual enrollment has been statistics. And I would say that a large part of that is because of going back to what are the needs of the students and how do you target the underserved students that might not be considered traditionally college going? Like what would they need to get them get their foot in the door in terms of college coursework. And statistics was often addressed as that because this targets two unique groups of students among the traditionally not college-going students. Those who are, to use some of the words that interviewees have used, afraid of math, or maybe they have a bad relationship with math. Statistics is often introduced or framed as a different kind of math from the traditional math that students may be averse to for one reason or another. And so it's much more approachable and easier for them to give it a shot. And then I would say that it also targets students who are interested in particular majors at colleges that might not require something like the quote unquote traditional algebra, pre-calculus, calculus track of math. It's a lot more applied. And so this becomes very relevant for meeting the requirements of college majors like, say, psychology or sociology or political science. And so it becomes a very useful course to take while in high school when you're considering how could I go on from this to think about a college major in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me for today's program. We've reached the end of our program today, and I want to thank Rachel and Hoyun for joining me in this discussion today. I'd also like to thank our funders, the California Community Foundation and the Gates Foundation. And thanks to all of you for joining us online today. We would really appreciate it if you took a moment to give us feedback on today's event. If you've pre-registered, you'll receive an email later today with a short survey. But you can also scan this QR code that you see on the screen. And finally, I want to say that the recording for today's event will be available on our website, ppic.org, and as well as our YouTube channel. So you can watch it again and share it with your network. Thank you all again, and have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye.